If cooking feels overwhelming, exhausting, or sensory overload inducing, you are definitely not alone in that. And often it's not just one thing that feels difficult. It can be the noise, the smells, touching certain textures, chopping ingredients, washing dishes, or simply the amount of steps involved. Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Bates. I'm a researcher in nutritional psychiatry, and I focus on how nutrition impacts mental health, particularly in autistic adults. Now, in my last video, we talked about why cooking can feel impossible. But today, I wanted to make something more practical, not in a life hacks way, because there's no single solution that works for everyone, but more as gentle adaptations, sensory supports, and ways to reduce the load around cooking. One of the most important things to recognize is that cooking is an intensely sensory activity. There can be strong smells, loud noises, heat and steam, wet textures, sticky textures, food splattering, bright lights, visual clutter and mess, and multiple things happening at once. And research consistently shows that autistic individuals often experience heightened sensory sensitivity and increased cognitive load in these environments. So, if cooking feels overwhelming to your nervous system, that response makes sense. One thing that can help is reducing unnecessary sensory input where possible. For example, wearing noise-cancelling headphones, listening to calming music or familiar audio, turning off extractor fans if the sound is too much, using quieter appliances where possible, or cooking at quieter times of the day. Some people also find it helpful to dim overhead lighting, use a smaller lamp instead, or reduce visual clutter in the kitchen. And importantly, you do not have to make your kitchen look or function like everyone else's. The goal is not perfection. The goal is reducing overwhelm. Now, textures can also be a major barrier during cooking and cleaning. Things like wet food, greasy, slimy textures, cold water, leftover food in the sink, or strong dishwashing liquid can feel genuinely distressing. And this is an area where small adaptations can make a big difference. For example, wearing gloves while washing the dishes, using unscented products, using a dishwasher if you have one, or rinsing dishes immediately to reduce food residue. These are not cheating, they're accommodations. And accommodations can reduce the amount of stress your nervous system has to manage. Preparation can also feel like a huge barrier. Chopping ingredients involves coordination, focus, planning, sensory tolerance, and sustained attention. So if that part feels exhausting, there are some ways to reduce the demand. Some people might find it helpful to buy pre-cut vegetables, to use frozen ingredients, maybe to use kitchen tools that reduce repetitive chopping, or to keep meals intentionally simple. And from a nutritional psychiatry perspective, reducing barriers around food preparation can actually support more consistent eating. Convenience is not failure. Sometimes convenience is accessibility. A lot of cooking overwhelm also comes from decision fatigue. Questions like, what should I make? Do I have the ingredients? Is this too much effort? What if it doesn't turn out right? These questions can become mentally exhausting. So it can help to reduce the number of decisions involved. For example, repeating familiar meals, rotating through a few reliable options, keeping easy backup food available, or using the same ingredients in multiple meals. And this is another reason that safe foods can be so helpful. Predictability reduces cognitive load. Research around autism, sensory processing, and executive functioning consistently shows that daily living tasks can require significantly more energy and cognitive effort. And from a nutritional psychiatry perspective, stress and overwhelm directly affect motivation, planning ability, emotional regulation, and eating behavior overall. So if cooking feels difficult, this is not a reflection of laziness or a lack of effort. It often reflects the amount of sensory and cognitive demand involved. I think it's also important to reduce shame around adaptations. So using gloves, frozen vegetables, pre-prepared foods, paper plates, meal repetition, or convenience foods does not mean you're doing food wrong. If those things make eating more manageable, then they are valid supports. If cooking feels hard for you, you are not alone in that. And you do not need to force yourself to do things the hardest way possible in order for it to count. I'd really value hearing your experiences in the comments. What cooking adaptation or support has helped you the most? You might also find my other videos helpful as well, so check those out. And if you're interested in more evidence-based neuroaffirming approaches to nutrition and mental well-being, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.